What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jordan Pyle and I'm your go-to Chicago real estate agent. And today we are talking about my love-hate relationship of living here in Chicago, and specifically 3 reasons why I love living here and 3 reasons why maybe I don't like living here quite so much. However, I've lived here 10 years and I keep deciding to live here year after year. So I believe the pros of living here in Chicago far outweigh the cons. So let's get into it. So thanks for hopping on the channel today. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, thank you so much for being back. And this channel is all about living, working in Chicago and everything in between, as well as Chicago real estate. So if this info today has been helpful for you, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe. Or if you're moving to Chicago and you need help with your real estate needs, my team would be honored to help. Feel free to text me at 312-805-7074 or reach out and fill out the form below in the description. All right, let's get into today's video about 3 pros and 3 cons of living in Chicago. Coming out of the gate hot, my #1 pro about Chicago, my absolute favorite thing is the Chicago active lifestyle. So I'm recently coming off my first Ironman, become somewhat of an endurance athlete during the pandemic, and I'm currently training for my first ultra marathon for 100 miles. And so for somebody that likes to take advantage of running, biking, swimming, having the lakefront trail here at your disposal is just something about Chicago I love so much, and honestly it's my favorite thing. I'm out on the lakefront trail or the river walk, pretty much all time of the year, about 4 or 5 times a week. And in the spring and the summer and the fall, I'm probably out there every single day. The other thing I love about the lakefront trail and just the Chicago active lifestyle is, like, you can be on the east side of the city on Lake Michigan, running out onto one of the piers like I often do, like at North Ave Beach here in Chicago, or potentially Navy Pier. And you're basically like right next to the water and you have the beach there, but then you have the beautiful Chicago skyline behind it. So it's a weird juxtaposition, but something that's just super cool about Chicago, and I think really makes it really unique. So I understand for some people, maybe the lakefront trail or the river walk isn't your thing. So maybe you're more into workout classes. Well, there's plenty of them. The Chicago active lifestyle here, I'm actually a member of East Bank Club, which has tennis, it has swimming, it has cycling classes, it has a huge gym, 2 pools outside when it's nice outside, it has a cold plunge. It's got so many different things that you can take advantage of just to stay healthy and to be active. But there's also a variety, I think 4 different equinoxes. And then there's the classes such as like Barry's workout classes, 312, tread, Pilates, core power yoga. There's hot yoga that I do sometimes at, where do I go? It's called 105 degrees. So there's just a lot of different workout classes. And if you're new to Chicago, this is something, if you're into fitness, that I think you should definitely do is get a class pass. And I'll throw something on the screen here. There's these different programs out there where you can buy packages of workouts, and then you can go and try a different variety of workout classes to see what you like the most, or just to continue to having the variety in your day-to-day workout and fitness goals. The other thing about the Chicago active lifestyle that I like is that you have divvy bikes everywhere. So if you're trying to transport from Lincoln Park to River North, or maybe you're going from Logan Square to Wicker Park, divvy bikes are pretty much everywhere throughout the city at this point. So being able to pay whatever it is, $8 or $4, I'll put the pricing up here on the screen, but to pay whatever that is for a 1-day pass, or I think it's very cheap, honestly, even considering getting like an annual pass for divvy, it's probably under like $100 a year, and you get unlimited rides for up to 45 minutes. So divvy is a really cool thing about being in Chicago. And even though I have a car, sometimes I just want a bike, and I don't want to take my bike just because it's inconvenient once I get to where I'm going to have to actually hold on to that bike. So just being able to park it to where I'm going and then walk the remainder of the way. Having divvy bikes here in Chicago is something I love about kind of the active lifestyle. All right, so next up we're gonna dive into the #1 con about living in Chicago, and you can probably guess it, Chicago winters. So from December till all the way through March into April, Chicago winters are typically pretty brutal. And I always say, for anyone that asks me about Chicago winters, it's whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And being here now for the last 10 years, it hasn't been so bad that it's made me to leave, but every single year it is pretty brutal, and they do seem very long. So be prepared, have a nice Canadian Goose coat or some type of really nice warm coat. I don't actually have a Canadian Goose, but it seems like everyone and their brother does here in the city. But having a nice coat, hats and gloves, some nice snow boots, things like that, you're gonna need those to make sure that you're feeling comfortable in the Chicago winters. And one thing I highly suggest and recommend for you to invest in if you have a car here in Chicago is some type of off the street covered parking. So preferably a heated garage. because being somebody that parked on the street for 4 or 5 years, probably about 5 years ago, my first 5 years in Chicago actually. It is absolutely miserable having to parallel park on a narrow, basically street or alleyway. And when it has a big snowfall and an ice storm or something like that, having to shovel yourself out of there while there's cars literally six inches in front of you, 6 inches behind you, it is quite painful. So if you don't have to shovel out your car every single day for 4 months, that is something I highly suggest you invest in. It's gonna probably cost you somewhere between $150 to $300. In sometimes certain neighborhoods, it might be even more for that, depending where you're at, but it is an investment that I would encourage you to make. But as I said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and the beauty of the long Chicago winters is that the anticipation for the other 3 seasons in like the April, May timeframe every single year is just awesome, because as soon as it gets nice out, Chicago fully takes advantage like you've never seen. So, all right, so the number 2 pro about living in Chicago is Chicago real estate affordability. So Chicago is actually one of the most affordable large metropolitan cities in the country. Every single year, UBS puts out a global bubble index, and Chicago is usually not even on the list, or it's at a negative in terms of risk of a bubble, in comparison to places like LA, Boston, San Francisco, Miami, New York, some of the other large metropolitan cities. Chicago is the most affordable in terms of home values. The median list price of a home here in Chicago is about $350,000, with about $250 per square foot. And lastly, the median home sale price was $320,000. Now here in Chicago, there's actually a very robust rental market as well. So if you're not yet to the place where you're able to afford buying or selling, or you're not a homeowner yet, the rental market is quite strong. So about 50% of the market here in Chicago, Chicago probably is the most, if not one of the most rent heavy cities in the whole entire country. So there's some good options for rental apartments. I think the average 1-bed apartment is right around like $1,825 a month, and this is slightly above the national average, which is about $1,550 a month. So it's about $250 to $300 more to rent here in Chicago versus the national average. However, to own here in Chicago, the $320 sales price is actually under the national average. So as of now, basically owning here in Chicago is more affordable than renting, but with the recent spike of interest rates, it's starting to become a lot closer. So really, this is where it becomes highly situational. One of the number 1 things I always recommend to my buyer clients, as I mentioned, I am a realtor here for the last 10 years in Chicago. When people are buying here, you want to focus on your monthly payment and not the amount of home that you can afford. So instead of saying, hey, I want to buy something for $400,000, say, hey, I want to have a payment monthly for my mortgage, which is my principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and my assessment. I want that to be no more than $2,500 a month. Because of taxes and assessments that can vary accordingly depending on the property, there's often a wide spread of what those are. So you want to make sure you can back into what your monthly and comfortable monthly payment is for you to have a property here in Chicago. Talking about home ownership, number 2 con about living in Chicago is we have one of the highest property taxes throughout the whole entire country, only second to New Jersey. So for example, on about a $218,000 home here in Chicago, you're gonna pay just under $5,000 annually for your tax bill. Now compare that to somewhere like Hawaii, that same property would have a tax bill of only $600 annually. So this is just one of the things you're gonna have to get used to with living here in Chicago is the high taxes. So there are some ways for you to either appeal the tax bill or to lower your annual tax obligation in a variety of different ways. So one thing is you could go through a formal appeal process. So tri-annually here in Chicago, properties are reassessed, so every 3 years. So a lot of times at that 3-year mark, when people receive their new property tax bills, they go through an appeal process with their association to try to lower that annual bill. Some other ways that you can get a little bit money off of your taxes is to, if you're a primary occupant, to apply for your homeowner's exemption. So this is gonna save you probably about $600 to $1,000 a year if you have your homeowner's exemption. If you're a homeowner and it's your primary residence, there's no reason why you should not qualify for this. And then also, if you're a senior, you can apply for your senior exemption if you qualify. So enough about property taxes. I don't want to bore you. I don't want you to click off of this video. And it is important, if this is helpful for you today, please do me a favor and like, comment, and subscribe on the video. But our number 3 pro of living here in Chicago is the diversity of culture. So Chicago is a city of neighborhoods. Specifically, we have 77 different neighborhoods. So without going very far from one neighborhood to another or from one street to the next, oftentimes you can be in a different neighborhood. And a lot of different neighborhoods have different makeups, different ways of living, different styles of lifestyle. Each neighborhood just comes with its own types of cuisines, its own style of people, its own diversity and different makeup of ethnicities. So really just the culture and the melting pot of Chicago is super cool. And personally, I just love having friends of all different backgrounds and all different ethnicities. I think it really allows you to experience life and to have perspective in a way that you can't if you just had a group of friends that were all the same background and ethnicity. So oftentimes in my work settings and in my personal life, I find that all of the groups that I hang with happen to be very diverse, and I love this about Chicago. So if you want to be in a melting pot of a city, Chicago is definitely on the list. All right, so winding this down here, the number 3 con of living in Chicago is the Chicago traffic and the Chicago construction. So it seems like whenever the actual weather is nice outside and there's not snow on the ground, there's gonna be construction on the road. So potholes exist everywhere, potholes galore. Just be very proactive when you're driving throughout Chicago because the roads are not in the best shape. They get a lot of wear and tear, and if it's not winter and there's not snow everywhere and the conditions aren't terrible, then typically there's road construction going on, which can either close roads, it can lead to narrower roads, which leads to more traffic, etc. So just getting from city to city, or potentially from suburbs to city, or from city to suburbs, can be quite the pain at certain times of day. So 8 a.m., 7 a.m., 9 a.m., you want to try to avoid these times if at all possible. Anywhere between 4:30 and 5:30, especially if you're trying to come in and out of the city of Chicago, it can make a huge difference on how much time it takes you. So plan ahead. I use Waze, the Waze app, to basically give me the most accurate, to and from locations and directions as possible. I recommend you use that as well. It takes into consideration construction, traffic stops, even speed cameras, different types of tickets that you can possibly get. It warns you of those. So Waze is really helpful here in Chicago, and most importantly, it takes into consideration traffic. So that is the number 3 con of living here, is the construction and the traffic here in Chicago. So that's it. That wraps up our 3 pros and our 3 cons of living in this beautiful city of Chicago. In my personal opinion, the pros far, far, far outweigh the cons. And for 10 years, I decided year over year to continue living in this beautiful city. So without further ado, if this video has been helpful, this channel is all about living and working in Chicago and everything in between. So if I can help you in any way, if you're moving to Chicago, feel free to reach out. You can either text me or you can fill out the form in the description below, and my real estate team would be absolutely honored to help you with your transition. So without further ado, like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next video. Peace.